What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Conversation Station. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at the art and storylines of these 5 new Defenders comics. I got 5 in total, and they range from issue 138 to 143, with the exception of issue 140. That is the only one I couldn't find. Now, I wasn't fully aware of the new Defenders, but I was aware of some of their members. Their members are Angel, Beast, Iceman, Valkyrie, Moondragon, Gargoyle, and Cloud. With Angel being like their team leader and manager, even though in one of the comics he actually does bestow the title of manager onto basically their security person who keeps all their stuff in check, and he makes her the manager of the new Defenders because he just wants to be the guy who pays for everything. Throughout all the books that I have, a big part of the storyline is Moondragon. It revolves around her and just her struggle to control the demon that she has inside. But while the team deals with just like trusting her, we as the reader get to go into her mind and into her time of being alone with this darkness and having to fight it and the battles that she goes through. And it's really cool the way that they kind of portray it and the way they show this hero with just such a struggling force. 138, we see the team heading home, and unfortunately the entire time Hank McCoy, Beast, just does not trust Moondragon. The character that it was funny to learn about was this character called Cloud, and apparently Cloud really likes Moondragon, so she turns into a guy when she's around Moondragon. But she also kind of has a thing for Iceman, and when she's around Iceman she turns back into a girl. And the main thing, or the main struggle for Cloud is Iceman really is attracted to Cloud when she's in this female form, but to know that this male form is also inside of there causes this, real awkwardness and this kind of hesitation to want to be as kind to her as when she's in her feminine form. But Cloud struggles with that and just tries to, let Iceman know that it's me, both me at the helm, despite who you see. But it's just an insane, power. Cloud has other powers as well, but that's just part of her mutant ability. Headquarters is in New Mexico, and it's mentioned many times throughout these comics. I don't know why that's so important, but they really tend to drive it home that this place is in New Mexico. They just mention it so much. But then when the new Defenders get home, their security has been updated to show Hulk standing in front of the door with a shotgun. So they're inside the lair. The head of security basically lets them know that she's updated their security to be able to pop out any type of hologram or robotic figure of any type of hero you can imagine, basically telling any intruder to halt and get out of there. And as you see down here, we have the Thing, there's Captain America, there's Wolverine, there's Namor, all these different robots popping out, telling, kind of with the same exact message, just repeating itself. And then to really show off, she sends out Galactus riding a giant dog named Sassafras that lives at the headquarters with them. And all through this whole run, we get bits of Moondragon, like I said, by herself, and it's an awesome shot right there of her kind of sitting alone in the dark, and it's just talking about how the whole team is finally back and done with fighting, and she still has a fight ahead of her that's caused by her own mind. A funny situation with Cloud that I was talking about, where Iceman Bobby Drake comes in to try to comfort her, and in the process Cloud turns back into a guy, making Bobby extremely uncomfortable and just kind of leaving him not knowing how to feel. And Cloud obviously feels like he's betraying and not being a good friend. It truly highlights the unpredictability of mutant powers and the things that come with the everyday problems that could arise from having them. So have a nice, awesome 2-page 1984 TV spot ad. And here we have a little bit more of, like I said, Moondragon's struggle, and it goes into her past and how she got her powers and how she came to be who she is. And honestly, her story is really traumatic. Second book, we see the group attacked by a group of underground trolls that basically haven't been seen since way back in the dawn of times, and they used to rule the world, and they are coming back up from these mines that humans have dug, and they are coming up and trying to take people. The beginning of the book starts with Odin looking in an awesome crystal ball as he's watching Moondragon struggle. Even though usually he's watching Valkyrie, right now he's watching both Valkyrie and Moondragon because he just wants to be aware of what she has going on. On this next page, we get an awesome full-page shot of Angel just stretching his wings and getting ready to fly, just go out for basically his version of a morning run. We get some really great artwork of him flying, hanging out with an eagle. Obviously that's who he would see on his morning route. Also got an ad for Secret Wars action figures from Mattel, so that's pretty awesome. Dr. Doom character right there, and just explaining all of the toys and the potential for the toys. Eventually the Defenders link up with a man called Red Wolf, and they talk about how he's actually worked with the Avengers before, but he, tells them and corrects them immediately and lets them know that he only fights for his tribe. But yeah, he has worked with the Avengers. Come into contact with these ungodly looking trolls, some amazing looking artwork on them. And it's just an epic fight between them and the Valkyrie. And the Valkyrie is actually the only one who's previously familiar with these things. They also got a really cool shot of Daredevil right here for the ad. It's like right in the middle, and he's extending his baton right there. It's really cool. And spoiler alert, by the end of it, they were able to get everyone out, and Valkyrie kind of stays behind to pull down the cave and make sure that these trolls can never get out again. Now, as I said, I didn't get 40, so we skipped from 39 straight to 41. This one has some amazing artwork on the front, and it depicts the being that they're fighting. And it's this big old glob that can turn into all different sorts of just terrifying forms. And creature that ends up making its comeback through him. And for no apparent reason and no specific reason of picking this person, it just decides you're the guy and fills him with these vines. Absolutely terrifying. And once the team's able to find him, they are just super worried and don't understand why this could happen. As a way we see on a farm that this again green thing has made these tentacle men that actually take over the horses and have stolen horses off this man's land. So when he looks through his binoculars, he sees these green-like men riding away with his horses, but really it's just the tentacles of this really giant monster. And it's basically all one organism, which is absolutely terrifying. All through this book, they're doing their best to fight it and keep it out. It actually turns into this horde of rabbits, and it's like hitting the window, trying to attack the window to get in. And they think it's just, regular, like rabid, some kind of weird vampire rabbits. And eventually they figure out that it's all part of one being, one organism that's stretched out into a disgusting mass. Half the team was back at the headquarters. The other half of the team was out on a mission that they had just gotten done with. So when they came back and they entered the runway, this thing had darkened all the lights and was waiting for their jet. So they were able to pull up just in time while this thing was it had darkened the entire runway. It was just waiting there, waiting to catch them. See the true form of this disgusting thing, and even the heroes are just absolutely taken back by how they're supposed to defeat it. Eventually Moondragon has to find a way to enter the creature and fight it, but this thing is able to shape into giant hands, able to knock against the glass to try to get in, and they just have to figure out any way they can to do it. Eventually the only way they can is, as I said, Moondragon finds a way to enter the thing with Gargoyle, and with the help of Gargoyle is able to disband this thing and kind of turn it into gas and basically slice it in such precise ways that this thing just kind of comes apart and falls down around them. We got 142 for the new Defenders. Some really amazing artwork on that one. I was really lucky enough to get it in good condition. The binding was awesome still, and all the colors were still really good, and no pages had any rips or taken out or anything like that. The story centers heavily around Hank McCoy going to a university to give a speech, and as he does, Senator Robert Kelly is also there to give a speech, and they meet up with a man named Adrian who ends up being a mutant, but he's kind of like a mutant, and instead of getting powers, a lot of his powers kind of give him disabilities and give him a lot of problems. On the beginning, we get a really awesome Cloak and Dagger ad right there. Some great artwork. There's been a lot of protests and just a lot of things about mutants and anti-mutant sentiments and things like that. Awesome shot of Beast, Iceman, and Cloud with the acronym MONSTER, which is the group that Hank ends up establishing to help mutants get a little bit more compassion and be compassionate and just have a little bit more of understanding. All the while, like I said, Moondragon still has that fighting force inside of her that she's still trying to deal with and grappling with every day. And also she's picked up a piece of that disgusting green villain that she fought. Because while she thought that they completely got rid of it and banished it forever, that thing was able to manifest itself out of nowhere after all the time when the team had fought it before. So that thing is basically just able to place itself in little crevices or wherever in people's bodies or wherever it needs to be to kind of pop out at later dates. This Adrian character goes after Senator Kelly, trying to hurt him for, feeling like he's just making mutants out to be villains and problems when, all his problems come from being a mutant. So he just doesn't see things that way. Fortunately, he's able to kind of get the upper hand on both Beast and Iceman, and leaving the only way to defeat him with being that Cloud is able to strike him with a lightning bolt. And that obviously does some really devastating damage. And then you find out that he wasn't really powerful. He was just kind of wearing an exoskeleton to make himself not be so weak from his disabilities and the things that he was dealing with from his mutant genes. Awesome scene with Hank, as I said, dealing with that moral dilemma and establishing his monster acronymed group. Last but certainly not least, the New Defenders 143. Another great, awesome cover art with Moondragon firing her awesome beam right there. Corner 2. On the back we got Secret Wars 2. Pretty cool. Sorry about that glare. This we get a bit of Moondragon's beginning, how her parents were killed in a car crash, and it was actually Thanos who did that. She later became a monk and she studied on Titan, but some really great artwork to show just the tragedy of what happened to her. The time Moondragon starts to feel like something's wrong with her, like she just can't really get right, so she goes and starts to basically do a scan on herself, look deep inside of herself on a molecular, on a cellular level to see if she can figure out why she's feeling so bad. And eventually she figures it out. She goes inside, and while she's inside her body, she realizes that green mass of life from the previous fight is inside her and now resides in her lungs and her heart. And it can basically stop her heart or stop her breathing if it really wants to. And the only way that she could force this being out of her body and expel this force is to say yes to the demon that she's been saying no to the entire time. And now this demon is taking this opening to say, let me in, let me help you, I can stop what's going to happen to you. And she's still resisting, saying I'd rather die than be evil. Time her conscience also kind of jumps over to everybody else, where they're having a conversation about not having, one of the team members is saying she wished she would have never joined the team and not having met anybody. And Valkyrie, of course, understanding that there's danger, just knowing, being an Asgardian, she understands that Moondragon is in terrible danger or going to be a terrible danger, to whether or not she basically accepts or doesn't accept the demon. Time on Titan, she actually met one of the Elders of the Universe, and he flew around and they hung out together for a while. But after hanging out on a dying sun and realizing that he doesn't really, he has ultimate power, but he doesn't really help out. The sun was going to blow up around them, and unfortunately, after he's willing to let a solar system die, she just can't sit by and idly watch that. And she kind of comes to grips with the thing she needs to do, and unfortunately, she lets that demon in order to save her own life. And the team ends up in a super fierce battle with her, and that's kind of where we end the story. And so I really definitely want to get the continuation of all these comics. But that wraps up my New Defenders comics. I definitely want to get my hands on more and finish out this storyline. I do appreciate any time you spent watching my videos. Do you like the New Defenders? Have you ever read any of their comics? Thank you, and I hope to see you again.